Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Claudia Monacelli with another episode of my podcast, Let's Talk Soul. And today I have a special guest. She's talking to us from the UK. Smita Joshi, say hello to our audience.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Claudia.
Well, let me tell you just a little bit about her, but it's a lot because she's done so much. Smita Joshi is an award-winning author and yogi and teacher and high performance transformation coach. So the sentence is very long, but the sentences get longer when it's when I have to talk about her bio. She's the author of the Amazon bestseller called Karma and Diamonds: A Journey of Self-Discovery Across Continents and Lifetimes. This story is inspired by real events from her own life and about finding her inner you amidst her life's chaos, as often happens with many people. But not everyone has the determination to write about it and to share about what they have experienced. The central theme of Karma's Diamonds is how your inner voice, the intelligence of the wise, conscious part of you that exists beyond your ordinary awareness, known as Atman in Sanskrit, has the power to guide you to live your best life. Prior to writing the trilogy, she was in a business career that spanned 25 years, working with the technology giants as well as startups. Smita worked internationally with global leaders of the industry, winning multi-million-dollar contracts, the largest being $1 million. And that is a milestone because we don't see these thresholds very often, especially for women. She was one of the first to bring India's information technology services into the heart of British and European companies. As a TV presenter and for her YouTube channel, which is called the Self-Discovery Channel, Smita, she has interviewed leading politicians, entrepreneurs, and global gurus. She also creates videos on topics of personal development and emotional and spiritual intelligence. And I will be listing her information where you can find her. So let me get to, are you an open book? Can I just ask you questions, Smita?
Ask me anything.
Okay, when you have such a long-standing career, my first question usually is, well, how did you start? But no, I'd like to go backwards, talk about your book. When did you get the idea to write the book?
Actually, I wanted to write a how-to book since I was about 14. I wanted to write something and I didn't quite know what form that would take. So I just kept reading and reading and reading as many different authors and types of, genres as I could. And I found myself wanting to actually write a very succinct how-to book. So just get down to the bare bones of how do you deal with the internal dialogue? How do you get past that? How do you distinguish the voice that is the nonsense, versus the, as we call it, the internal dialogue in psychology, and the one beyond that, the voice of something that's much more useful beyond your identity, and so on. So there was a whole range of things that I wanted to do a how-to book on, but they're all sort of linking up into the same theme. And the theme is really about living connected to your purpose, living connected to that part of you that is beyond the ego, beyond the identity, the thing, the dislikes, and so on. And
when did the book see the light? What are the dates?
when do they actually see the light? So
Yes.
the first book, so I thought I was writing one book, and it turns out when I took it to the publisher, it turned out to be three. So the first book we brought out in 2015, then the second 2016, then 2017. So as it happened, the one of the mentors that I had was a publisher who had an imprint within one of the larger groups, and he said to me, well, I would like to know, more about you. People want to know your story. So can you write the story first and then you can do a how-to book? And that's how I ended up switching, because I never wanted to write the story. That wasn't my plan at all.
Right, right.
I was kind of pushed into a corner to do it. And I did. That's how it came about. So the idea originally was just to write a very, very non-invasive.
Of course. And this has just happened to me because after writing the entire book, I get to the introduction, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, maybe readers want to know who I am and how I got here. And it's so difficult. It's so difficult when you're not used to looking at yourself that way for others. I can understand that.
No, I mean, and also I didn't have the experience of writing something like that. My experience had very much been in terms of my personal vulnerable work was my own journals, and really sharing my thought, putting my thoughts for my own consumption so that I could actually move through something. And then the other expertise I had was in writing business proposals. So,
of course,
I had never, very different. So I had never written something which was going to take me into my depth and my pain, and was something that was going to be, and it's a very different way of writing.
Oh,
so
I know
it's
that.
not a, when you write because when you're writing a book like the ones that the trilogy that I've written, you're not writing for yourself. You're writing your perspective, but so that other people can actually benefit from it.
Right, they can use it, and that's the challenge with writing things like self-help and nonfiction and how to. So let's see. Let me go to, because as we speak, that word self keeps coming out. So what about if you talk about that real self? What is the real self, and why is it so elusive? When with that question, I'm thinking, is the self the soul? Is it?
Yeah. Yes. So this is where we get lost, don't we? When we start to get into the semantics of what is it? Is it the soul? Is it the spirit? Is it the higher self? Is it something else? And what I found was that actually what I mean by the real self is pretty much what the ancient philosophers, scientists, sages of India meant, which is it's that part of you which is permanent. It's the part of you that is unchanging. It's constantly on. It's always on. It's not the limit, the temporary part of us, the one that dies with the body. So in fact, there is no part that dies with the body except for the body itself, as I experience it, as the ancient Indians also said. And so it's that part of you which is more permanent. It goes on. It has the ability to. It's consciousness. It's it's consciousness.
We get these words that keep coming up because when you say that it's permanent, I say, oh, soul. She's talking about the soul. And then I thought, well, no, wait a minute. She meant the ego. Did she mean the ego? Did she mean the ego? No. But then you came out with consciousness, and so you open a wide open door because many people overlap the two concepts. And when you say self, I guess that includes both. And I'm wondering, why
it has
didn't you
to.
soul?
but and it does indeed. Yeah, I mean, in Sanskrit they call it jivatman. Jivatman is the soul, that part of, that's a subset of a vaster consciousnness that we are. But that part, that's a spark that actually hops into the body, as it were, and that's the consciousness that we bring. But that aspect of us is said to come with memories, certain things which it brings with it.
Right.
And so it's not entirely, I would say it's not entirely clear, but it is a bridge to the source, because it is source in essence. It's actually a part of a whole, but it's it's like the ocean, but the drop of the ocean might contain something additional in there,
of course,
which is your own impressions from from wherever, for example, we have memories in this lifetime, things that accumulate over time become a pattern, beliefs, there are certain things that become set, and
Right.
they drive the outcomes and our choices. Therefore, they drive our choices, and therefore the outcomes
Mm-hmm.
that we experience in life, good or bad,
Mm-hmm.
whether we choose to, or, so it takes something to shift that aspect of you. And that's what we're looking to transform, if ever we are transforming something into its greater self,
Mm-hmm.
or into its higher essence, into
Right.
its higher octave. And that's that subset, that's what we call the Jivatman. And so the Sanskrit terminology, the Vedic terminology is very perhaps more precise than any other, because in
Yes.
English,
Yes.
we talk
English,
about
we
spirit,
lack. There's a lack
which is
of
why I
being
like
able
to
to
keep it's not
describe
so
it.
much to, that terminology actually has a more precision to it, more accuracy, and
Mm-hmm.
we can then relate it to
Right.
the experiences that we have in life. So to answer your question, eh, you know some aspect of the ego is naturally involved,
Mm-hmm.
because without that identity aspect, we can't really distinguish anything. So we have a framework of thinking, or we may not have a framework of thinking, but
Mm-hmm.
we have a, let's just say, an unconscious framework, if we don't have a conscious framework from which we think. So everything that we receive, or we think, or we see, perceive, gets filtered
Mm-hmm.
through that framework that
Mm-hmm.
we have, that we understand
Yeah.
life through.
Maybe
So
on to the next question will allow us to clarify, because we're now on the inside looking out, and um, we talk about values. If we're talking about a self, and an ego also has values, but it, you mentioned clear values, how to get clear about your values, and why you should be clear about your values.
I believe, and this is my perspective, and what I've seen with people is that it's not that people don't have values per se, because anything that you give your time to, or that you choose above something else, that you consider to be more important in your life than something else, you could say that that's a value for you, but it may not
Yes.
necessarily serve you. It may not. For example, codependency, so relationships, let's say, where you have relationships which you believe are, absolute for you. Everything comes up, your relationships with certain group of people, or certain individuals, over and above anything else. You'll protect it, you will fight for it, but it may not necessarily be, it may not necessarily fulfill you. It may not necessarily bring you joy, happiness. It may, in fact, have a detrimental effect on you. So, so how do you then distinguish which values you have that are giving your life as it is? And actually, if you were to begin to become, if we were to start being authentic, and which is what happens on a journey of self-discovery, is you
Mm-hmm.
start to inquire, like,
Yeah.
what's really important to me. And it may be that some of those things that you consider are important today may fall by the wayside, because in
Mm-hmm.
fact, um, they they're only by default something that you've been conditioned to believe or
Let me
choose.
open a digression here as to make it clearer. All right, you mentioned a codependency, a relationship of codependency. Let's take the perspective of a woman with a child, and we're talking about values. The other partner is not involved. Okay. Now, when we talk about having clarity in our values, a mother is in a position of having to care for and be a role model for. I would imagine, and I'm just talking, taking from what you said, and the idea of clarity, it's easier for a woman, I'm talking about women, to have clearer values in that position, in that role. Does that make sense? And she's not codependent on the child.
Right, absolutely. So that's a choice that she makes. It's almost but it's a choice, and one could say, well, she has no choice. But the fact that she chooses to tend to the child, to nurture her child, and so on, that becomes a real priority for her, and that becomes a value. That's definitely there's a value in there somewhere, however she may articulate it. And it's the same when we talk about caring for other people in our lives, whether they're elderly people, parents, or whatever. These are choices we make, but they are, relationships. So it comes down to nurturing certain relationships. That becomes a real strong value. But she'll sacrifice herself for that. And that's what a value does. A value is something that you will give up something else for in order to nurture that particular aspect of your life. So for me, for example, is freedom, inner freedom, and, the freedom to choose my life, to make choices for myself, for my life. Now, you may say, oh, well, that's obvious, but that's not always obvious in certain communities. We have to fight for that.
Of boundaries as well, no matter how dependent a child is on us, there is a boundary there, because otherwise you will not be able to live as a person. You mentioned darkness, the power of owning your darkness, and I like this because I call it shadow work. Shadow work, how we deal with our shadow. Can we talk about that? What do you mean by owning?
So if you look at how various values work, so certain communities over and above everything else, it's about looking good on the outside. You can't share what's not working. You can't share your failures. You can't share mental illness, and so on. So, and what I mean by owning your darkness is exactly that. Is that there are aspects of us which we like the least, and we may even detest. We may even look at other people and have extremely strong repulsion when somebody displays a certain quality. Let's say intimacy.
Yes.
Okay. Intimacy is something that it's some people absolutely can't be with that, because it's so triggers some other aspect, something that they can't be with in themselves. To the extent,
I'm not understanding, when you say they can't be with that, they can't share that, they can't discuss that they're uncomfortable with intimacy,
all of
period.
Or even other people who express it.
Oh, I see.
Other people, because it triggers something, and when it does, whenever we're triggered by something from the outside, then, as then that's an area for us that we are disowning in our own self,
and
right?
we need to work on.
Exactly. That's what I mean by owning. So, for example, anger is a really good one. Right. Often, when we don't own, when we don't own the things that, our own deep rage or anger, then what happens is either you project it outwards onto other people. You can't, or it goes so far that you can't be with other people being angry. You can't allow them the space to express themselves, with their strong emotions. Or it could be that you continually attract that into your life, the energy of anger, because you're not expressing it, you're not owning it.
Right.
So, I mean, I think for me, one of the things that I had to own and really distinguish for myself was I had no idea that I was a shame machine. Like, I did not realize that I'd been brought up to look like I've got it all handled. Everything is handled.
Give us an example to make it clearer?
Yeah. So if I felt sad, if I felt vulnerable, who would show up? This is way in my very, very young days, in my early 20s. So who would show up is somebody who is so strong and so handled. She's like, looking great. She looks like she's on top of everything.
Right.
Like I'm getting on with stuff. This is how it is. Nobody would know that beneath that is extreme sadness and extreme pain. And something that I could no my, I for myself couldn't be with that because it was so intense. So it was something that I had to teach myself. So one of the things that happens in various cultures, and I think if we talk about cultures, it's probably
Yes.
you can see it more
Yes.
easily.
Yes.
There are some cultures that where looking good on the
Yeah.
outside
Yeah.
is absolutely everything. So
Yeah.
because what are we hiding? We're hiding shame. There's a deep sense of
It's a very
shame
strong word,
for
Smita.
failure.
Shame.
Yeah, shame. It's huge, and it gives us, it leads us to create a facade
Right.
where where we will let the world see a certain aspect. We'll
Yes.
go to
Yes.
great lengths to let the
Yes.
world
Well,
see.
here you've introduced another topic here. How can we break free from that need for external validation?
So yeah, I've got some great videos on my YouTube channel on this, by the
Good.
way.
Give us a
Um,
title of one of the videos. I went and I was looking at your YouTube channel. Beautiful. So, how can I say, just like you were mentioning now, it's so put together.
well, that I can assure you that's a product of real conscious hard work. It
Yes,
wasn't, I spent a year learning how to make some of these things. So
I know.
so to come back, external validation, this is where this is where understanding that there is a part of you that exists beyond the identity comes in so handy. Because when I talk about the part of you that's permanent, the part of you that is not temporary, then there's great comfort, at the very least, in that paradigm, when you can turn to that and go, you know what, I am I'm so scared, or I'm so scared of not being loved, or I'm so scared of not being liked, or whatever your flavor it might be, that has you want that
All right,
validation.
now wait, I'm going to stop you if you don't mind. We're on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, you have a YouTube channel, and when somebody gives us a like, I have a smile on my face. If somebody gives me a thumb down, I don't have a smile on my face. In some way, there's an expression in Italian that says something like this: when you go on the dance floor, you have to dance. That means you are there, or else you could dance in your living room. But if you're on a dance floor, you're there for the purpose of being seen. And there are many facets, of course, Smita. I learn from others who give me feedback online, telling me, oh, that video really helped me because. Um, when you said blah, 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 I think what you meant was, and sometimes there's a criticism as well, and I used to take it personally. Now, how does this factor in? Because we're public people. When you say there's, external validation, how to break free, I understand the topic, I understand the theme, but we are social beings. We don't exist until I don't want to exaggerate, but our nature is social. And being social means to have contact with others. As we are doing in a conversation, I wouldn't be able to have this conversation if you weren't there, and if my questions were irrelevant or out of place, it would end very quickly, this dialogue, right?
Mhm.
Now, how do you figure that public persona, because it is a public persona, and going back to our inner self, how can we break free from that? We just turn off the video, we turn the camera off, we go and watch a video, we make believe that didn't happen, it just flies over our head, it rolls
You
off our
mean when
skin.
somebody criticizes us,
Well,
when
yes.
someone gives us a negative feedback?
No. How do you explain? How do you explain to a child? All right, I'm going to use the child, and you have a child in front of you. You go to a 5-year-old class. They're all 5-year-old, and the topic of the day is be your best self. Don't worry what others think. Okay, I'm making it up, and then a little girl says, Smita, I saw you on television. Boy, you looked wonderful. You had a white suit on and you were talking to all those people. Were you your best self? And so that is a big question that a little 5-year-old asks you. And at the same time, you're trying to get a message of authenticity of their individual persons. I see it as a necessary, a coin that has two sides. You can't be without one. But there must be a cutoff point. When you talk about external validation, too much external validation, do you mean? How when you need to break free, does that breaking free emerge because you are obsessed with other people's evaluation? I don't know if I've made the question.
Let me put it this way. It comes down to being comfortable in your own skin, no matter what.
Good for you, brava.
Right? So the when people give positive feedback, it's wonderful, and we all love it, and we receive it really well.
Right.
And then then there are times when we don't get the likes on the videos, or we don't get the views, or whatever. Algorithms are not favoring us, and so on. So what do? Do you make a decision about yourself on that basis, or do you say, well, what do I need to do better? What can be done better? Did I make a mistake? How can I improve my content? Yes. So that's what that would be my line of inquiry. Like, it's not about me to take it so personally. It's like the 4 agreements. And the 4 agreements, one of the 4 agreements in the book is don't take things personally.
Right.
And this is a very
Smita,
hard.
you have to tell us the other 3 now. You can't just do that.
I forget the other 3. They are things that I practice, but I forget exactly how they show.
I didn't want to put you on the spot.
I don't
That's
remember.
Okay. So
but this
don't
one
take
is
things personally.
Don't take things personally is such a big lesson in, I think, all our lives. And for me, I will say it's been one of the hardest because I'm such an empath. There are people who feel things very deeply, sensitive to other people's emotions and feelings. And especially if one of your core values is having in deep relationships with people.
Yes.
Then the idea of, you care what they think.
Yes,
and over time, one of the things that I realized is this is very wise. It's a very wise teaching that don't take things personally. It's not about you.
It's difficult.
Why is that? Why is it not about you? Because people see things through their own filters and their own past and their own experience. So it's not that you should invalidate what people say to you, because then, we don't learn. By all means, consider it. By all means, see what the feedback is. Is it true? And if it isn't, there's nothing you can do about it other than challenge it if you want, if that's a valid reaction or response. And if not, you can't go online to trolls and whoever else, people that want to.
Right.
People are angry at life and they want to take it out on somebody. So, it happens. I think it's really important to be comfortable in our skin. And that's a big, deep transformation journey.
Yes, it's a long, that's another episode. It's a long story, that one. So if you had to tell people how to stop reacting, as, for example, in this validation question, and turn your pain into power, how can you suggest people do that?
We have this tendency to want to scratch the itch as soon as the itch arises. It's like, we want to react. We want to react. Sure. You said that. How dare you? Who do you think you are? And one of the things that happens as you get more comfortable in your skin is you really begin to question what is worth responding to.
Yes.
And what would be a worthy response.
Yes. I would like to tell you, look, Smita, it comes with age. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. No, it doesn't.
It's a muscle we have to develop. It's a really conscious muscle we develop. Because I'm a yogi, as you know, yoga is very very rooted in my everyday life. I teach and I do very strong asana practice. I meditate, and it teaches the discipline of thought. It teaches discipline of breath. It teaches
Okay.
and developing physical strength and mental strength. So it is really that anything that's worth having, it's like going to the gym every day. You have to develop it slowly, over
And
time,
how could
consistently.
people start to develop if they don't do yoga, for example? How could people do it within the confines of their home or their, solitude, perhaps? What do you suggest?
I always turn to the breath.
Yes.
When somebody says something,
Yes.
and you want to react, your
Yes.
initial reaction is react. You
Yes.
want to do the ping pong with them. Stop, listen, take a breath. Nothing is going to happen. Nothing is going to happen if you do that. In fact, what will happen is when two people are very stressed, then they go at each other, right? Like
Right.
they're like
Yes,
that with
yes,
each
yes.
other. But if one of the two calms themselves down, this is how the nervous system gets calmed down, through conscious breath. And it's very simple. You just stop and kind of go,
Yes.
okay, I'm listening. Anything else you want to say?
Yes.
Because we come from that place that what they're saying is true.
Yes. Yes.
But
yes.
in fact, it's not true. It's not true. It may be true. It may not be true. Mostly
But
we
that
know it's
doesn't
not true.
matter.
When you start to defend yourself, you're now in the mud with them.
Yes.
You've now gone to their level. You're in the
love
mud.
that vision. I
and
can
there's
see the mud
Nothing.
stinging.
It's like the mud. Exactly, the two pigs in the mud.
Right.
In the sty, and nothing gets done. Nothing happens. Both of you are dirty. Nothing new can come out of it.
Yeah.
So that's why I think, when we talk about developing a muscle, you can think this, you can think that, but the immediate is the breath, because
Yes,
it's what
of
we do
course.
all the time.
Yeah.
So
And it
get
works
into
like
the breath,
magic.
really
Like
conscious.
magic. So we started by talking about the trilogy, Karma and Diamonds. Now, that was 2015, 2016, 2017. We are now in 2023. Where is the new pen? What have your hands been doing? Have you been charting out a new piece of something to
Something
publish?
else. I have a couple of projects in the go. I'm not allowed to talk about it right
Okay.
now. But what I will tell you is that I have really looked at the art of creating videos, interviewing, creating my own content. That is a skill, in and of itself.
Yeah.
And like writing the books,
Right.
learning to write the books the way that I
Yes.
did, that was a new skill I developed. Again, and so these things all take some sort of time. And I must say that I also love enjoying life. So, traveling a great deal. I dive a lot, travel across the world and so on. So all these things have been part of my life, and creation happens
Put
as
them
it
in
does.
different boxes, and sooner or later we're going to see that. So contact me when something sees the light, and then we'll talk about that the next time. Thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure to talk to you, Smita.
Thank you so much, Claudia. Really, really enjoyed having this conversation. Appreciate.
Till next time, then.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Take care.